Good morning. Welcome and thank you for participating in OSHA's National Safety Stand Down to Prevent Falls in Construction. This presentation is going to focus on fall protection, hazard awareness, and applications associated with aerial work platforms, also known as mobile elevated work platforms, or MEWPs, a term you'll hear us use throughout the presentation. My name is Tony Groat. I'm the International Powered Access Federation, also known as IPAF, regional manager, and I will be your subject matter expert. And I'll be joined with in the presentation today by Robert Mendoza, who's the CEO of MAXFALL Pro, and he will be our subject matter expert. But as we talk about potential hazards, I always start with the premise that mobile elevated work platforms are the safest means to gain temporary access to work at height. But you need to make sure that you're doing all the right things and the selection, risk assessments, and other things that we'll talk about in order to ensure the safe and continued operation of this equipment. One of the sayings that I like to put in most of my presentations that is feeling safe and being safe are not the same thing. So I want you to just chew on that a little bit and think about what that means, because I'm going to show you some things in the next slide. So here you have a bunch of pictures, which unfortunately are not difficult to uh, get out in the marketplace or on the internet these days. And you look at all of these, and none of these resulted in an accident. So, because there wasn't an accident, does that mean that these were safe jobs? So, when you hear we're 100% accident free and these types of pictures are involved with it, does that mean that we had a safe workplace? And hopefully, everybody who's on this call understands the answer to that is no, that's not the case. So, there are times that we need to make sure that we're doing things, because while you may not have an unsafe practice result in an accident, it doesn't mean that that itself is a safe operation. And if it's not stopped, that practice will continue on the next job and the next job and the next job, because we get kudos for getting the job done. So I want us to really think about that as we're moving forward. Is that issue, which is again, is feeling safe and being safe, are they the same things? So next, I'm going to show a little video of a fall accident, and which kind of gives a summary of the points we're trying to make here.
On the 29th of July 2018, as part of construction works, two contract workers were tasked to rig a steel pipe in the regeneration kiln area at Cowell Gold Mine. The unusually shaped pipe was required to be fitted 4.8 meters above ground near pipework, tanks, and structures. The pipe was to be connected to existing pipework located inside and outside an existing four-post structure. To accomplish the task, the workers were using a scissor lift. The worker was wearing a safety fall arrest harness and connected it to an anchor point on the scissor lift. He climbed onto the scissor lift's platform, which was in the stowed position, and operated the scissor lift using its wired control unit. The workers found the scissor lift to be too high to fit under the angled steel bracing connecting two of the structure's upright steel supports. The worker suggested to his co-worker that they take the guardrails off the scissor lift and then walk it into the structure using the wired control unit. The guardrails would then be refitted prior to use once inside the structure. The worker and his co-worker unfastened the bolts that secured the front and left side guardrails to its platform. They removed the left side guardrail, lifted the front guardrail from the tubes it was housed in, and rested it on the platform. While still on the platform of the scissor lift, the worker was wearing his safety harness, but did not attach it to an anchor point on the scissor lift. The worker held the wired control unit and began driving the scissor lift forward while on the platform. As he did this, he lost his balance and fell forward over the front edge of the scissor lift, striking his head on the concrete surface about 1 meter below the platform. An emergency response was activated. The worker sustained an abrasion on the left side of his forehead, experiencing pain and altered sensations in his limbs and left hip. He was diagnosed as having sustained severe narrowing of his spinal cord and underwent surgery, where he experienced a series of complications. On the 8th of August 2018, the worker suffered a cardiac arrest, which is believed to be secondary to his spinal surgery. His condition further deteriorated and he tragically passed away on the 14th of September 2018. The causes leading to the incident include the removal of the scissor lift's guardrails, accessing the scissor lift's platform with its guardrails removed, and operating the scissor lift with its guardrails removed. The investigation found that had the workers walked the scissor lift through, this incident would have been prevented. Regardless, had the worker's harness been appropriately connected to the anchor point of the scissor lift, it would not have prevented a fall over the side of the scissor lift. While working at heights, most people who are seriously injured or killed fall from a height of 4 meters or less. It is recommended that mine operators and contractors review their procurement processes to ensure that mobile plant is fit for purpose, ensure their mobile plant procedures incorporate adequate risk management practices, ensure that work groups have sufficient levels of site experience, develop procedures to define how common tasks are to be performed, including identifying how and when elevated work platforms are used, train workers about managing risks associated with plant modification, and educate workers about the degree of harm which can occur when working at heights.
So the real message that I want you to take from that video were the end conclusions that were made. And you see a fall from a scissor lift that wasn't even in the elevated position. You find out that in that particular case, the fall would not have been prevented even if they were wearing personal fall protection equipment. So the fall still would have taken place. So really what we're looking at, you really understanding in its full context, is that safe operations require lots of individual activities. You need to have properly trained operators and supervisors. You need to make sure that you have the proper selection of the mobile elevated work platform and the equipment associated with it, which could be personal fall protection equipment, could be protecting the area from someone hitting it. There's a wide range of those, which is identified through doing a risk assessment and putting in place safe work procedures for hazard awareness, and then monitoring and supervising to ensure compliance with all of those elements. So there's many tasks that need to be taken into account, not just saying, am I wearing the proper fall protection equipment, but that also is another important aspect that we're going to address today. So today we're going to be looking at what I say a couple of the pieces of the puzzle. So we're going to be looking at hazard awareness and proper selection of equipment. So the numbers really say it all. So if you're looking at it from an OSHA perspective, who mandatorily has reports for any fatal or serious accidents that occur, in 2022, with construction industries, there were over 1,000 workers who were fatally injured. And within that, they have what they call the fatal four, which are falls, struck bys, electrical, and caught in between. And within those, 38% of those, or 410 workers, died from falls in 2022 alone. And that number is relatively consistent over the years. So when you're looking at the Bureau of Labor Statistics data on, and you see here it has the total number of fatalities, and then you have total STFs, that's slips, trips, and falls. And then within that, going to a lower level or on the same level. So when you're looking at the same level, that's kind of like a slip or trip, whereas to a lower level is somebody who's elevated, which is where the majority of these fatal falls occur. And then when you're looking at slicing that onion down a little bit deeper, they give you information that says when you're looking at those within the construction industry, most were related to falls that occur with workers who are over the age of 45. The people in the South had most of the falls. And while Hispanic workers represent 29% of the construction workforce, they account for 39% of fatal falls to a lower level. So looking at the information gives you more education to know some of the areas where we need to look at and concentrate on and take actions. IPAF, as an association, has its own reporting portal that we invite anybody to go to anonymously put in incidents that occur. And we look at the data for mobile elevated work platforms only. So when you're looking at the data that we have over here, again, looking at the data that's for 2022, you can see where we have the first, which is 1B, which are what we call static or vehicle mounted MEWPs. They represent 45% of the incidents that occur. Then you have 3B, which are the self-propelled booms. They represent 12%. Then we end up having vertical mobile machines. Most people are going to call those scissor lifts, a 3A machine. That's 29% of the incidents that occur. And then 1As are a static vertical, which is a lift that goes up and down, but it needs outriggers, so it's not drivable when it's elevated. And that's 2% of the incidents that occur. And then there are others, which are, mass climbers, transport platforms, other items that are outside of the traditional new categories. So when you're looking at all of these products that are in here, it's telling you that a fall can occur from any one of these. So while we traditionally talk about the requirement to wear personal fall protection on boom type lifts, which you can see 45% of them are vehicle mounted and 12 for the self-propelled, 29% of them occur with the self-propelled verticals or scissor lifts. So the catapult effect that we'll talk about a little bit is why you need to wear personal fall protection in addition to the fully guardrail platform on boom lifts. But you don't have that same dynamic with scissor lifts, but we still have people falling out of those as well. When we're looking at the data that comes from OSHA, the one additional item that we look at is that these citations are the top citations that come from it. 2 of the top 10 are related to fall protection. One is the falls themselves and fall protection training. So these 2 items are constantly at the top of the list. And it's an area that says this is an area where we need to make some improvements on, because as you looked at the data for the accidents, we have over 1,000 every year, and we need to do something to bring those numbers down. So when we're looking at our information from our standards for aerial work platforms, we have what's called a Group A and a Group B. And the Group A is where the platform extends over the chassis, and a Group B is where the platform extends beyond the chassis. So the tipping point goes outside of that. And dominantly, we require through OSHA, ANSI, and all other regulations, the requirement to wear personal fall protection equipment, in addition to a fully guardrail platform on all Group B type equipment. However, I would also tell you that on Group A machines, which are scissor lifts dominantly, you're looking at the requirement that could say that in a risk assessment, you may be able to identify reasons that you would be wearing personal fall protection on a scissor lift. It could be just a site requirement. And I would say in addition to that, on the Group A machines, you could have a manufacturer who will recommend that you wear personal fall protection on scissor lifts. And I know specifically that one manufacturer, JLG, does make that recommendation that you wear personal fall protection on scissor lifts. So that would be a case where you would be wearing it on all MEWPs in operation. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of the common hazards associated with MEWP regarding falls. So as we go through these, one of the things that happens on an ongoing basis, and having this thing do it automatically, and I don't want to do that, but the first one is it has falls when you're loading and unloading equipment. So that's one where most people may not think about it, but there's an awful lot of incidents that occur when you're loading and unloading the equipment off of a vehicle. Secondly, you end up having this example down below here, and this is what we call the catapult effect. So when the machine, boom type lifts specifically, go over some type of a bump or a divot, you'll find that you end up having this work platform that's on the end of a beam. And the calculus for that is that you end up having what we call the moment of inertia. All this moment of load is put into that work platform and can literally eject an individual out of that work platform. That's known as the catapult effect. And that is really the reason why OSHA and ANSI and all of the manufacturers require you to wear personal fall protection in addition to a fully guardrail platform on boom type lifts. Down below, you can see here, we end up having struck by. So you have a lift that's up in place and you have other vehicles that are in the area. Could be a crane going by with a load. You have a struck by, which you can end up having an individual fall out of the equipment. You end up having this situation here where an individual is in a position where they are overreaching in the work platform. So again, the work practice that you have here, again, making sure that you connect your personal fall protection. Too often we have individuals who are on a mobile elevated work platform are wearing personal fall protection and get in and out of the machines and forget to connect to the anchorage on the machine. Here you see an example where an individual has personal fall protection on it. Obviously, here he's doing something wrong where he's not putting his feet firmly on the platform floor and exposing himself to a fall. Here we have one where we overload the platform and we can then have the individual fall out of the machine. This one here, you can see the individual exiting the work platform in this particular case to reach his work. Here you find a person who's modifying the machine, putting a work platform on the outside of it and exposing themselves to fall. No proper guardrails, no proper personal fall protection. And up on top, you can see where someone's adding a ladder to it. In this particular case, you can see these with people putting step ladders or things to raise themselves off of that work platform. And again, now you don't have the guardrail protection, you don't have the personal fall protection to protect you in those situations as well. And last but not least, we end up having just entering and exiting the work platform is an area that you can have falls. So again, when just looking at this as the most basic uh, form of falls that can occur, entering, exit, this is just like a ladder, and you have the same basic hazards and risk associated with climbing. So again, we always face the work platform when we're entering and exiting it. We use 3 points of contact, 2 hands and a foot, or 2 feet in a hand. You always have the platform lowered to the ground level, and you never jump from that work platform. So again, this is kind of the basic areas of these are the types of falls that can occur. These are the hazards that you need to consider when you're doing your risk assessments and making sure that you are properly protected. So the next step we're going to go into is we've identified these, and now we want to look at, all right, what is the personal fall protection that is associated with properly being selected for this use? And I'm going to turn it over to Robert. So Robert, now it's over to you.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Good morning, everyone. So I'm here to kind of help you determine what level of protection is required. Selection of the appropriate personal fall protection system. Um, there are three components to a fall protection system. You have your anchor point, and you have your body wear, and then you have your connection being lanyard, restraint, shock absorbing, SRL. Next. Here are the anchor points that most mobile platforms that you see out there have, and you have to connect to those anchors specifically based on the manufacturers of the MEWPs, scissor lifts, and stuff like that, because you're anchoring yourself below your back dorsal D-ring. So you got to make sure that you are anchoring, that you're locked in on only the anchor points of these equipments. So you contact your, your manufacturer to make sure that you're connecting appropriately. As Tony mentioned earlier, training is key. Training is key on how to put on your harness. Just like the picture before where the guy wasn't even connected. He was, had his harness on, but he wasn't connected. So you got to have a lot of training. Make sure you get training on how to dome the harness. Make sure you have the proper connections, how the equipment works. Next. So on the MEWPs, you are supposed to be using a class 2 with the new reg of the Z359.14 2021. Class 1s are for overhead connection. In the MEWPs or in the mobile platforms, it is required an SRLP, which is a personal device, which they're showing a 100% tie off with the 2 legs. But like I say, they do have the single leg, which are most common in these mobile platforms. Next. So here you see this gentleman connected. As you can see, his SRL is at the anchor point. For the most part, the old standard, you're not able to do this, neither with the new standard, because most manufacturers have their shock absorbing on the outside of the actual block, whereas you have to connect it to your back dorsal D-ring. This one here is an old device because it doesn't show any type of shock absorbing mechanism on that particular device, but it is anchored incorrectly. There are manufacturers out there that have the new class 2 where you can use them both ways, where the body of the device can be anchored to the anchor or vice versa to the back dorsal D-ring. But as always, check with your manufacturers to see the proper way of connecting those devices if you choose to use the SRL. Next. So this is kind of giving you an idea of all the incidents that happened. 46 incidents, 36 deaths, and 56% of it was all here in the USA. So we're kind of, we try to get things done quick and fast, but at the same time, we need to really have the proper training in order for you to, be safe and do your job and not have to worry about, connecting incorrectly or anchoring. That's what you need, the proper training in this fall protection equipment. Next. So this is kind of letting you know when you're moving the mobile platforms, you want to connect as short as possible. So that way you don't get ejected out of the bucket with the catapult effect. Next. So there are three solutions that you can use when using these mobile platforms. There is the fall restraint lanyard, which basically is adjustable. Of course, when you're moving the equipment, you have to adjust it properly, because if you don't adjust it properly, you still can get catapulted out. This device here keeps you in the inside the bucket. That way, you don't have that catapult effect. They do allow you to use the fall arrest shock absorbing lanyards, but that is not adjustable, and it's 6 feet, and it's possibly catapult you. Next, I'll show you the videos. These are the 3 components that are required. You can use the SRLP and the adjustable restraint together in combination, or you use the shock absorbing lanyard. Next. So here's a little graph showing you what the SRLP can do, what the restraint lanyard can do, and what's the difference on the shock absorbing. As you can see, the SRLP is the combination of a restraint and shock absorbing mechanism. So, you can use that as your fall arrest equipment. The restraint, of course, is just to do the job of restraining you from climbing the rails, reaching out, getting over the guardrails. And the shock absorbing works as if a person does go over the rails, it will, catch them also in arrest. Next. This video is going to show you the effect of the catapult. So that was with the shock absorbing lanyard. The next one is going to show you what a SRLP when used while moving the mobile platform. So you see there how quick the SRL pulls them into the basket and not causing the catapult effect. So that gives you an idea of what the SRL can do when you're moving your mobile platforms. Next. So here are different connections on the devices that some manufacturers can use both ways, where you can connect the body of the device to your back dorsal D-ring or the anchor point of the MEWPs. And but like I say, just check with your manufacturers of your SRLs to make sure that theirs are capable of doing this, which most are not, because of the external shock pack that they have on their devices. So basically, what we're saying is that the SRL would probably be the best combination to use. And you could still use the 6-foot shock absorbing lanyard, but this is kind of, once you connect it, you don't have to worry about your fall protection. Next. So this kind of summarizes the equipment that is used on these MEWPs, and but just to let you know that training is key. You want to be able to don that harness correctly, not just let it hang on, not just put it on so you can make your quick repair or whatever you're working on, but and put the proper equipment and that is authorized by the using the MEWPs by IPAF. And that's it for today, Tony.
Thank you, Robert. So again, now we go to the next step, which is we have a fall. So if someone falls wearing personal fall protection. And this is really becomes critical that, again, looking at this from a systemic approach, you need to have a fall protection rescue plan. And while we can do a, multi-hour presentation on that topic, we're going to give you the most basic approach to this, which is a rescue plan must include a self-rescue by the person involved. And we end up having a self-rescue that could occur just if the machine isn't moving and the person can use auxiliary controls in it. But if he falls from it, they're actually devices that you can also buy from the personal fall protection manufacturer that gives them a leg rope that they can climb on. So there's a way to actually do a fall rescue by the person themselves, which is the self rescue. We can have an assisted rescue, which is the person falls from it. They may be unconscious or not be able to move, not have the tools to do a self rescue. In which case, you have an assisted rescue, and that's generally what we have is a ground person who will use the ground controls on the MEWP itself to lower the individual down to the ground. And obviously, you need to have do some due diligence and care lowering an individual who is suspended from the machine. And last but not least, you have a technical rescue, which is by emergency services. So keep in mind that 911 should not be your rescue plan. So that there's whole processes that you can put in place. And even today, when you're looking at a rescue plan, we have aerial work platforms that extend self-propelled booms over 215 feet in the air, vehicle mounted over 300 feet in the air. And if you call 911 and that machine is stuck in the air, believe me, they're not going to have a bucket truck that goes that high. So you need to do some planning depending upon the equipment that you have and putting your rescue plans in place. So that's another critical planning that needs to occur prior to the start of a job. We have MEWP falls from outside the work platform. So too often people are using these as elevators, and they're not elevators. They are mobile elevator work platforms to allow you to access work at height. And when you have these applications in place, you need to, again, understand that you're putting your people at risk because there is obviously here fall hazards. But today, manufacturers have lots of tools that are out there that identify the needs of people. Here is what we call an accessory deck. Too often you have seen people going over and putting planks across the mid rails to gain some temporary work at height that they can't get with their guardrail system being in the way. So these tools are now very common in the workplace, and you can see they're available on many of the scissor lifts, and they have some of those that are available for being used on a boom type lift platform as well. So understand what the accessories that are out in the marketplace that are out there today are. So when you're looking at proper exiting at height, we end up having manufacturers who actually develop specialized equipment that can be used for particular situations. But you also have manufacturers are putting out there some devices that can go out there and allow you to access work at height and exiting at height with this new guardrail system new anchorage system. So both Genie and JLG are two examples of a manufacturer who have this external anchorage system that you can use to work outside the platform, but it requires you to have a process that's defined in writing by the manufacturer to allow that operation to occur. So these are tools that are out in the marketplace today. And again, this is just a clear view of those accessories. The other item that's out in the marketplace that is available is a lanyard detection system, or what we call an intelligent anchor. And the intelligent anchor allows you to identify whether the individual is connected or not. And there are multiple systems that are out in the marketplace today. And it would be my expectation that in some future design standard, it'll be a requirement, and you'll find that it will then be introduced on all MEWPs that are being manufactured from that point forward out in the marketplace. I'm going to give you an example of one manufacturer's system so that you can see this is out in the marketplace today.
The nifty lift clip-on is simply a sensor system that we attach to our current harness points that tells the operator and the ground teams if they are or are not clipped in. The system provides a visual and audible aid to not only just alert the operator but the ground teams as to the current status of whether the operator is clipped on to his machine. The system was developed really to react to the market's requirement for additional safety features to alert whether an operator is or is not clipped into the mute. When the machine is switched on, red LEDs above each harness point indicate that no harness lanyard is attached. If the operator tries to activate the machine using the foot switch, an audible alarm will sound as an additional reminder. The LEDs around the machine will change to green as soon as a harness lanyard is attached, and the alarm will stop sounding. The green light under the cage clearly indicates to the ground team the status of the operator harness attachment. So we wanted to make sure that the system was as easy to use and simple for the operator. And the beauty of the system is that it can be retrofitted to existing machines. The nifty lift clip-on system aids in site safety by providing an aid to operators and site management teams. At Nifty Lift, we're passionate about innovation and passionate about safety. The clip-on is our latest innovation in safety systems, and I'm pleased to announce that this will be available from all current models. So the Nifty Lift clip-on system improves safety, it's simple to use, it's a no-brainer.
Give me 1 second. There. Well. All right, I stopped sharing, so give me 1 second, go back in. Okay, sorry about that. So again, the important part of that one is as a lifelong user of this equipment, I'll tell you that I have found myself that I'm a well-trained and educated person on the hazards and the use of this equipment. I get in and out of a lift depending on the work that's being done, and I'll find one time I'm up in the air and I forgot to connect. And unfortunately, sometimes it's that time that one person has forgotten to connect that an incident occurs. So having that warning signal out there is great for the operators and their occupants to make sure that they're connected. The last thing I'll kind of put out here is that there's lots of information that's out there available for you. IPAF has on its website lots of toolbox talks and posters to go out there and remind people. So keep thinking about that someone has been going through and been trained as an operator, and every 3 to 5 years they have to get trained again. That's a long period of time, depending upon their frequency of use, to go over there and have toolbox talks and reminders and refreshers of these types of issues to always be attaching it when you're on a boom type lift or where you require it within your organization, and all the other attributes that will help prevent falls from occurring are available to you. You go to the website, they're available for free, and download it. But at the end of the day, the most important part that we'll make is work safely. Tomorrow is your reward. So if you're a worker that's out in the marketplace, you have a responsibility for your own safety as well. So make sure that we're not taking shortcuts. We're doing the best and following all the rules and regulations that we have in place, because it is really when those shortcuts are put into place, we're exposed to potential accidents. So that concludes our presentation. I appreciate everyone's attention. There's a Q&A button that's there. So if anybody has any questions, Robert or myself would be glad to address those. So now would be a good time for you to hit that Q&A and put any questions in front of us. So Robert or Anna, I don't have the Q&A visible on my screen. Are you seeing any questions coming up?
David Weffler is saying, suggestions, best practices for using some of these add-on devices like external anchors and lanyard detection systems. Do you
Okay.
have any suggestions for best practice for using these add-on external anchors or lanyard detection systems?
Well, the answer is that it is because I sit on the standards. It is my expectation that in some future standard, it will become a requirement for all manufacturers to provide one of those detection devices. Today, it is not a requirement. Some people are seeing the value of it and producing those, so there are multiple items that are out in the marketplace. The answer is, from a best practice, the best practice for me would be to make sure that the devices that you have moving forward have some type of a detection system available. So there's a range of those that are out there. So if I go back in the presentation, give me a second here. There are multiple devices that are out in the marketplace that can be used to all existing equipment. So, depending upon, the type of work you're doing when you're doing your risk assessments, if you feel as though you have individuals who are getting in and out of the equipment on an ongoing basis and have that risk of forgetting to connect, getting one of these devices would be part of my control measures to do that. Outside of that, you always have your supervisor who is supposed to be monitoring them on an ongoing basis to identify that they're not connected. You have a best practice that says that the operator is kind of like the commander of the ship, and they should always be connected, and they should ensure that any occupants are connected. So you'll end up through the risk assessment saying how, if this is the risk that we forget to connect, what are the best practices you're going to put in place, control measures to ensure this. And the detection device is going to be the ultimate means of doing it, because it is self-monitoring. So if you're not connected, it's going to tell you you're not connected. So that would be the best approach that I would suggest. Any other questions, Anna?
No, 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 no. Oh, okay. So Guy saying there is a lot of discussion regarding SLRs. I am glad you mentioned that they must be the proper type and used correctly. There are ones that are not appropriate. Thank you, Guy.
Yes, that is correct. So, Robert, would you do me a favor? One of the things that I think is a question mark out in the marketplace today is the selection of the SRL, and we now have a new Z359 requirement that speaks to this new nomenclature that's out there. Excuse me, I'm trying to get to it. The class 1 and class 2. So Robert, what happens to those that are out in the marketplace today that don't have these nomenclatures on them? Can you speak to that a little bit?
As far as the old standard devices?
Well, yeah. So what the question would be is right now we have a lot of SRLs in the marketplace that are being used, and some of them were manufactured to the prior standard. They're not going to say class 1 or class 2 on them, correct?
Correct. Those
So
will probably say like a class A or a class B. Like say, when you're purchasing new devices, you have to have class 2. If you have existing devices that are still working properly, you need to check with your manufacturer to make sure that they're still, approved and can be used in the scissor lifts or your platforms. Class 2, for the most part, most devices out there, the SRLP, which is a personal device, that's what the P is for. Those are the ones that are required in the MEWPs. Those can only be, for the most part, most manufacturers can only be connected to the back dorsal D-ring. There are manufacturers out there that provide a device that is a class 2 that can be used both ways, which we showed on one of the pictures where that particular device there could be, anchored at the anchor point or at the back dorsal D-ring. But like I said, that's when you have to go look and do your homework to make sure that manufacturer's device is able to work that way. Otherwise, you have to use it the way it is intended, which is on the back dorsal D-ring. Class 1 is not, you cannot use class 1 devices because those are anchored above your head. So those aren't able, you cannot use that, that type of device. So you have to use a personal device, which is the SRLP. You cannot use just a regular SRL because, there are SRLs that are, not personal, but they can be used, both ways, but does not allow you to be used in the platforms, because the platforms you have to have a personal device.
So to be very clear, when you're
question.
looking, just for a second, so to be very clear, you see here's the SRL device and it's connected to the anchorage point, and so we would speculate that this manufacturer does not allow this to be used this way. That this
correct. That is
device,
not a class 2, and the reason I say it's not a class 2 because most class 2 devices have on the body portion of it have a shock absorbing mechanism or a pack that is a external impact device, and that one doesn't have it. So that is the old standard. That particular device in the picture, he's supposed to be wearing that on his back dorsal D-ring. He's not allowed to anchor at the bottom, right, unless that particular manufacturer allows it. But
we doubt it.
I doubt it. Like I say,
yeah. So really, what we're saying here is, even though this device that's pictured here can be an appropriate personal fall protection SRL device for use on MEWPs, he's not using it properly. This
correct.
Device should be on his anchor. So even here, and because it's upside down, Robert, what is the problem of it being on here? What makes it not approved here?
There, because there, if he goes over the rail, it may not lock correctly. It might, it might extend further than what it's supposed to. And if it's not designed to work in that configuration, then, the brake pawls inside might not lock, and he might just keep going and have a harder impact than what is, designed.
Which is like, correct. Okay. All right, Anna, you had another question?
Yeah, is there an expiry date or a requirement for an annual inspection for SRLP?
Yes, usually it depends on the severity of the use of and the company. If the company has its own safety procedures and they say, hey, I want my SRLs inspected every 6 months, but the manufacturers usually have, the manufacturer will have maybe a year inspection or a 6 month inspection. It just depends. Check with your manufacturer to see what they require as an inspection. But mostly companies, have an inspection criteria when they need to have those. And that's my rule of thumb in the beginning, when inspect before you choose, because you could pick it up and it might not work. At that point, of course, you need to send it in, but there is no set date. You just have to check with the manufacturer.
Thank you, Robert.
Robert, I'll ask one question here. When I'm looking at this slide, I'm seeing 2 SRLs connected to the dorsal connection. Why would we have 2?
That is considered 100% tie-off retractable. So in other words, if steelwork erectors, when they're working on on the rebar or whatever they're working on, the steel girders, and they need to move to another section, they take one of their hooks, attach it to the other section, and then dismount the other hook and move. So that way you're tied off 100% of the time. You're never disconnected from your anchor point. That's why they have the duals. You cannot use them, you can't hook them both together on a anchor point. You just use one at a time, but that is what they consider 100% tie off. For the most part, the scissor lifts or the MEWPs, you can use just a single. You don't necessarily need 100% tie off unless the application, like you mentioned, you got to take a risk assessment of the hazard that's going to be applied and see if
you're exiting at height would be an
correct.
example.
Yeah, if you're exiting like you have shown, or the attachment on some of the lifts where you have to move to a different area where you have to be anchored.
David is asking, best practices for twin leg lanyards in MEWPs?
What was the question?
Best practices for twin leg lanyards in MEWPs?
For twin?
Yeah, twin leg lanyards.
Wow, that's the first question I've heard of that on a platform. Usually, like we had discussed, the combination where they're putting a restraint.
He means double lanyard.
Yeah, because you're only moving 6 feet. Let's just say the platform is 6 feet, 8 feet, and you're tied off to one corner, and you want to move to the opposite corner to be able to be tied off and then disconnect. That would be, that's the purpose of twin lanyards, is to be 100% tied off at all times.
Yeah, I would say that typically we would not use a twin lanyard in a MEWP because of the size of the platform. The only time that you may use it is we have some large platforms which will have different anchorage points. So as you're moving around some of these large platforms, you may be in a position where to keep yourself in 100% tie off, you'll go from one anchorage to the next. But obviously, you would never be connected to two anchorages on as as an example, putting one on, so I'm on restraint, but I can move between the two of them. So it really is intended to be connected to one at a time, but it's keeping you 100% tied off while you're making that move. And that could be within the platform. So we have some very large work platforms that are out in the marketplace today. So we have like there's a new MEC has had one, and there's another manufacturer, Tadano, coming out with a boom type platform that's like 7 foot by 14 feet. So because it's a boom type platform, you always need to be connected, and how you can be connected and have the mobility around that platform and be connected. So that may be an example where a twin would be used, but I would say it would be a rarity that twin would be used, with the exception of exiting at height, where you need to have a very formalized written process to follow.
Yeah, with my experience on the clients that we have, I've never sold a twin for that purpose, to be used in that configuration in any type of mobile platforms. But if you do that particular device, or would have to be connected to the back dorsal D-ring only, it's not something that you would be able to anchor at the anchor point and then grab the hook and then, okay, well, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to use this one, I'm going to go over here, I'm going to use this one, or tie two people off, with one device, So it's just, the training and reading and getting with the manufacturer to make sure it's going to work for your application.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. Any other questions before we close out?
Well, Guy is saying thank you. So there is not requirement in ANSI C359.14 for an annual inspection.
Robert, I'll let you address that. So, right,
Yes, there is. It's based on the severity of the use. And it's, if you're using it just to change a light bulb in the warehouse, then yeah, at that point, it's one of those where no, you don't require an annual inspection. But if you're using it every single day in the mines or inside a steel, manufacturing plant, it's just the wear of it and the use at that point, you require to get it inspected. There are facilities out there that will do the inspections for you, for the manufacturers.
but Robert, what will we not summarize by saying that most manufacturers are going to have some requirement
Yes,
for an inspection?
me as a
So,
manufacturer, MAXFALL Pro as a manufacturer, if the company or the client or the business doesn't have one in place, then yes, we would ask them, okay, after a year, send them back so we can make sure that everything's working properly and go from that point. As far as ANSI, I don't recall them. I would have to, investigate about that yearly inspection requirement.
so ultimately, the question is the Z359 standard doesn't specifically require it, although a manufacturer may. Is that a
Yeah,
correct statement?
yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, again, thank you all. I appreciate everyone's participation today, taking the time to address this, I'm going to say, leading hazard in the construction industry and beyond. And hopefully we've addressed this. This has been recorded, so a copy of it will be there. You can see my email address on the Q&A side of it. So if anybody has a question or request beyond this, you can feel free to keep a hold of me at any point in time. And beyond that, I would say thank you, and the session is concluded.
Thank you.
Thank you for your assistance, Robert.
Thank you, Tony. I hope I answered everything. I'm gonna have to check on that one question too.